My parents didn't show up to my medical school graduation. They said Samantha's corporate presentation in New York was more important. But when I opened my own medical clinic in an underserved Seattle neighborhood, they arrived unannounced with a photographer, claiming they'd always supported my dreams. I looked at them through the glass door, smiled, and locked it. The clicking of their expensive dress shoes on the pavement outside my clinic was the only sound breaking the morning silence. My father pressed his face against the glass, his breath fogging the window I'd just cleaned. My mother stood beside him, her perfectly manicured hand raised to knock again, while a professional photographer adjusted his camera behind them. "Benjamin, open this door," my father called, his voice carrying that authoritative tone that used to make me shrink. "We drove all the way here to celebrate with you." I sat at the reception desk, calmly organizing patient files. Through the window, I could see the photographer circling, trying to capture angles of the proud parents at their son's clinic. The morning sun illuminated the sign I'd hung myself. Community Care Wellness Center, Benjamin Rocha, MD. They'd received the same announcement everyone else had. 4 months ago, I sent elegant cards detailing the clinic's opening date, time, and address. I'd even included information about the ribbon-cutting ceremony scheduled for tomorrow when the mayor would attend. But this morning visit, unannounced and staged, was classic Richard and Patricia Rocha, showing up only when there was something to gain. My mother's voice rose, tinged with that wounded tone she'd perfected. "Sweetheart, we know you're upset about the graduation, but we're here now. That's what matters." What mattered was that 3 years ago, when I received my medical degree, they'd been 800 miles away watching Samantha present quarterly reports to her firm's board. I'd sat in the University of Washington's auditorium, surrounded by families celebrating, while my seat remained conspicuously empty. Even Trevor, my best friend since undergrad, had looked uncomfortable watching everyone else's parents beam with pride. Dr. Helena Ferreira, my mentor from residency, had noticed. She'd taken photos of me in my regalia, bought me dinner afterward, and never once mentioned the obvious absence. That kindness had meant more than any hollow explanation my parents could have offered. The photographer knocked on the window now, gesturing for me to look up and smile. Instead, I picked up my phone and opened the folder I'd created specifically for this moment. Inside were screenshots spanning 8 years. Every family dinner, every holiday, every milestone where I'd been present and documented. There was Samantha's law school graduation, where both parents had taken the entire week off. The photo showed them flanking her, holding flowers, beaming. I'd driven myself 6 hours to attend. Samantha's first day at the family firm, my father had thrown a dinner party for 40 people. I'd been invited as an afterthought, seated at the far end of the table. Samantha's engagement party, a lavish affair at the Columbia Tower Club. My parents had spared no expense. When I'd gotten engaged during my second year of residency, I'd received a text. "Congratulations. Send us the date when you know it." The engagement had ended 8 months later. My ex-fiancé couldn't handle the hours, the stress, the reality of dating someone dedicated to serving low-income patients instead of pursuing a lucrative private practice. My mother's only comment had been, "Well, maybe now you'll reconsider joining that practice group in Bellevue." I scrolled past photos of birthday dinners, anniversary celebrations, even my grandfather's funeral, all attended alone or with Trevor standing in as my only family. Every single event documented, time-stamped, geotagged. "Benjamin, this is ridiculous," my father called, his patience clearly thinning. "We're your parents. You can't just lock us out." But I could, and I would, because in my pocket was tomorrow's Seattle Times, delivered early to local businesses. The front page of the local section featured a full-spread article about the clinic. "Young doctor brings hope to underserved Greenwood community." The article detailed my journey, my vision, and included quotes from future patients who'd attended the community meetings I'd held for 6 months. What the article didn't mention was family support, because there had been none. When I'd approached my parents about investing in the clinic, my father had laughed. "Community medicine? Benjamin, you'll be broke in 5 years. Why would we finance that?" Instead, I'd secured a small business loan, found 3 investors who believed in accessible healthcare, and worked 16-hour days during my residency to save every possible dollar. Trevor had helped design the website. Dr. Ferreira had connected me with pharmaceutical companies willing to provide discounted medications. The community had rallied with donations of furniture, supplies, and volunteer labor to renovate the space. My parents' contribution? Silence. Until now, the photographer moved closer to the door, and I finally looked up, made eye contact with my father through the glass, smiled pleasantly, then deliberately reached for the window shade and pulled it down, cutting off their view entirely. I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath, then rapid conversation I couldn't quite make out. Good. Let them stand there. Let them explain to their photographer why their son wouldn't let them in. Let them experience for once what it felt like to be excluded from something important. Tomorrow, when the clinic officially opened with the mayor, city council members, and local media present, my parents would learn exactly what it cost to show up only when it was convenient. Because printed in tomorrow's program, in the acknowledgments section I'd written personally, was a detailed list of everyone who'd helped make this dream possible. Their names appeared nowhere on it, and that, unlike their presence today, was entirely intentional. The banging on the door intensified. My father's fist against the glass created a rhythmic thud that echoed through the empty waiting room. I could hear my mother's heels clicking as she paced, her voice rising in frustration. "We'll just come back tomorrow then," she announced loudly, clearly meant for me to hear, for the official opening. "We're family, Benjamin. They can't exclude us from a public event." I pulled out my laptop and opened my email. Sitting in my drafts folder was a message I'd composed 2 weeks ago, waiting for exactly this moment. The recipient list included my parents, Samantha, and extended family members who'd asked about the clinic opening. The subject line read, "Regarding tomorrow's opening ceremony, important update." My finger hovered over the send button as I listened to my parents finally retreat to their car. Through the gap at the bottom of the window shade, I watched their Mercedes pull away, the photographer's van following behind. Only then did I hit send. The email was professional, cordial even. It explained that due to limited capacity and safety regulations, tomorrow's ceremony was invitation only. Attendees had been confirmed 3 weeks ago, with names submitted to building security. I attached the official guest list, 47 names of investors, community members, medical colleagues, and supporters who'd actually been present during the clinic's creation. Richard, Patricia, and Samantha Rocha appeared nowhere on it. What I didn't include in the email was the second event happening tomorrow night. A private dinner at Daniel's Broiler, hosted by my 3 primary investors, where they'd introduce me to potential partners for expanding the clinic model to other underserved Seattle neighborhoods. The investors, all family friends who'd watched my parents dismiss my career choices for years, had specifically requested my parents not be informed. They'd turn it into a networking opportunity for Samantha, Marcus Klein had said bluntly during our planning meeting. Marcus owned a chain of medical supply companies and had known my family since I was 12. "This is about you, Benjamin. About what you've actually built." My phone buzzed. A text from Samantha. "Really? You're blocking Mom and Dad from your opening?" I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the clinic's social media accounts, platforms I'd been building for 8 months, sharing the renovation progress, introducing future services, engaging with the community. 15,000 followers, most of them local residents excited about accessible healthcare in their neighborhood. I drafted a post. "Tomorrow we open our doors, grateful for everyone who believed in this vision when it was just an idea. Community medicine works because communities make it work. See you at 10 a.m. Within minutes, comments flooded in. Mrs. Patterson from 3 blocks over, whose husband had diabetes and no insurance. The Rodriguez family, who'd been taking the bus 40 minutes each way to reach affordable care. Teachers from the local elementary school. Small business owners. People I'd met during 6 months of community meetings, listening to their healthcare struggles, designing services around their actual needs. These were the people who mattered tomorrow. Not the parents who'd shown up with a photographer to manufacture a proud family moment they'd never actually lived. My phone rang. My father. I declined the call. He called again immediately. Declined again, then a text. "We need to talk about this like adults." The irony was almost funny. For 8 years I'd tried to talk to them like adults. Tried to explain why community medicine mattered, why profit wasn't my primary motivation, why serving underserved populations was actual medicine, not a waste of my degree. My father's response had always been the same. When you're ready to be serious about your career, we'll discuss it. Serious meant private practice, meant joining the Bellevue group where their golf buddies' sons worked, meant cosmetic procedures and concierge medicine for wealthy clients who'd pay cash for house calls. I'd watched my parents' definition of success my entire life. Samantha embodied it. Prestige, money, social status, connections. She'd followed their blueprint perfectly, and they'd rewarded her with unwavering support, financial backing, and public celebration of every minor achievement. Meanwhile, I'd graduated medical school with $240,000 in debt, worked part-time throughout my education, and spent my residency in the ER treating exactly the population I planned to serve now. I'd learned Spanish to communicate with patients, volunteered at homeless shelters to understand barriers to care, and designed my entire practice around accessibility. The night I'd told my parents about the clinic concept, my mother had literally sighed. "Benjamin, when are you going to stop playing savior and start building wealth?" Dr. Ferreira had a different perspective. When I'd nervously presented my business plan during my final year of residency, she'd studied it carefully, then smiled. "This is real medicine, the kind that actually changes lives. You'll never be rich, but you'll go to sleep knowing you mattered." She'd introduced me to Marcus Klein, who'd introduced me to the other investors. Within 6 months, I had funding. Within a year, I had a location. The Greenwood district had exactly what I needed, a neighborhood in transition, with longtime residents being priced out alongside new families struggling with Seattle's rising costs. People who needed health care but couldn't afford traditional options. My phone buzzed again. Trevor. "They showed up, didn't they?" "With a photographer," I replied. "Jesus, you okay?" "Better than okay. Tomorrow's going to be perfect." Because tomorrow, unlike my medical school graduation, would be filled with people who'd actually supported this journey. Dr. Ferreira would be there, having taken the day off from her own practice. Trevor would be running the AV for my presentation. The mayor would speak about community health initiatives. Local news would cover the story. And my parents would be standing outside security, learning what it felt like to be excluded from their child's milestone moment. My computer chimed with an email response. "Samantha, this is petty and vindictive. Mom's been crying for an hour." I stared at the message, feeling a familiar tightness in my chest that had nothing to do with guilt and everything to do with rage. My mother had cried for an hour. How long had I sat in that graduation auditorium, watching other families celebrate, before I'd stopped scanning the entrance for faces I knew wouldn't appear? I typed a response. "I sent the invitation 3 months ago. Same as everyone else. You all declined. Tomorrow's guest list closed 3 weeks ago, per building security requirements. If Mom wants to attend a future community event, they're posted on our website." Then I blocked her number. The next morning arrived with crystalline clarity. I'd barely slept, running through final preparations in my mind, but adrenaline had replaced exhaustion by the time I arrived at the clinic at 7 a.m. Trevor was already there, testing microphones and positioning cameras for the live stream we'd planned. "Security's set up downstairs," he said, handing me coffee. "They have the list. Your parents aren't on it." "I know. They're definitely coming, though. Your dad called my cell at 6 a.m. asking me to talk sense into you." I took a long drink of coffee. "What did you say?" "That you'd talked perfect sense into yourself years ago, and nobody had bothered listening." Trevor adjusted a camera angle. "Also that I was busy and he should try respecting boundaries for once." By 8:30, early arrivals began gathering. Mrs. Patterson came with her husband, both dressed in their Sunday best, despite it being Thursday. The Rodriguez family brought their 3 children. I recognized faces from community meetings, people who'd shared their stories, their struggles, their hopes for accessible health care. Marcus Klein arrived at 9, accompanied by the other 2 investors, Dr. Mao, Sarah Chen, who owned several urgent care facilities across Washington, and James Morrison, a retired hospital administrator who'd built his career on community health initiatives. "Big day," Marcus said, shaking my hand firmly. "Your parents outside yet?" "Haven't checked. Security called me. They arrived at 8:15. Been sitting in their car." He smiled slightly. "The photographer's with them." Dr. Ferreira was the last to arrive before the ceremony began, bringing with her 3 colleagues from the university medical system who'd expressed interest in partnering for resident rotations. "Benjamin, She embraced me warmly. You should be incredibly proud. I am, and I meant it. Looking around the waiting room, seeing the community members who'd volunteered their time, the investors who'd believed in my vision, the medical colleagues who saw value in what I was building. This was what success actually looked like. The mayor arrived at 9:50, accompanied by 2 city council members and a small media contingent. I'd met with Mayor Harrison twice during the planning process. She'd been enthusiastic about the clinic model, especially the sliding scale payment structure and partnerships with local social services. Dr. Rocha, she shook my hand for the cameras. This is exactly the kind of initiative Seattle needs. Healthcare shouldn't be a luxury. At exactly 10 a.m. we began. I stood at the podium Trevor had set up, facing 47 people who'd earned their place in this room. The live stream was broadcasting to another 300 community members who couldn't attend in person. Good morning, I began, my voice steady despite the emotion building in my chest. 3 years ago, I graduated from the University of Washington School of Medicine. I sat in that auditorium looking at my degree, and I made myself a promise. I would use this education to serve people who needed it most, not people who could afford it most. I saw Dr. Ferreira smile, saw Marcus nod approvingly. Community medicine isn't about profit margins or prestige. It's about a diabetic patient getting insulin they can afford. It's about a child receiving vaccinations regardless of insurance status. It's about treating people with dignity, respect, and competent care every single time. My phone, sitting on the podium, kept lighting up with calls from my parents' numbers. I ignored them. This clinic exists because a community said yes. Yes to affordable healthcare. Yes to supporting neighbors. Yes to the radical idea that zip codes shouldn't determine health outcomes. I gestured to the people around the room. Every person here contributed to making this possible. Through investment, through volunteer labor, through spreading the word, through showing up to planning meetings and sharing what you needed from your healthcare provider. I pulled out the printed program and held it up. In here, you'll find acknowledgments. Every name of every person who helped build this place. Every donor, every volunteer, every community member who attended our meetings and told us what services mattered most. These are the people who believed in this vision when it was just an idea scribbled in a notebook. Through the front window, I could see my parents' Mercedes still parked across the street. My father was on his phone, probably calling anyone he could think of to intervene. My mother stood beside the car, arms crossed, staring at the clinic entrance. The mayor spoke next, discussing Seattle's healthcare accessibility challenges and praising the clinic's approach. A city council member detailed potential city partnerships for expanding services. Dr. Chen talked about the medical supply donations her company would provide. Then Dr. Ferreira approached the podium, and I felt my throat tighten. I've been practicing medicine for 37 years, she began. I've trained hundreds of residents. Benjamin Rocha is the kind of doctor who reminds me why I chose this profession. Not because he's brilliant, though he is. Not because he's dedicated, though he absolutely is. But because he understands that medicine is ultimately about people, not protocols. About communities, not corporations. She turned to look at me directly. On Benjamin's medical school graduation day, I had the honor of celebrating with him when others couldn't make it. I watched him walk across that stage with the same determination I see in him today, the same focus on what matters. And I knew then that he'd do something extraordinary. My eyes burned, but I refused to let tears fall. Not here. Not now. What makes this clinic extraordinary isn't the equipment or the business model, Dr. Ferreira continued. It's the fact that Benjamin chose the harder path. He could have joined a private practice, made 3 times the salary, and enjoyed a comfortable career. Instead, he chose to work twice as hard for half the recognition because he knows that's where he's needed most. She paused, her voice softening. Real support isn't about showing up for photo opportunities. It's about showing up for the difficult moments, the late nights studying, the loan applications, the setbacks and obstacles. Benjamin surrounded himself with people who showed up when it wasn't convenient, when there were no cameras, when success wasn't guaranteed. Those are the people honored in this program. Those are the people who made this possible. The room erupted in applause. I saw Mrs. Patterson wiping tears. Trevor gave me a subtle thumbs up from behind his camera. As the ceremony concluded, people mingled, talking excitedly about services and asking when appointments would begin. I'd scheduled the first patient slots for Monday morning, already filled completely through word of mouth and social media. Marcus pulled me aside. Tonight's dinner is at 7, Daniel's Broiler private room. Just our core group and 3 potential partners for expansion. Keep it quiet. Understood. Your parents have called me 6 times this morning. I'm sorry. Don't be. I haven't answered. He squeezed my shoulder. What you've built here, Benjamin, it's exactly what your grandmother would have wanted. My grandmother. My father's mother, who died when I was in college. She'd been a nurse her entire career, working in rural clinics across Washington. She'd left me a small inheritance, $30,000, with a note that said, "Use this to help people who need it." That money had become my personal investment in the clinic, the seed funding that convinced the bank I was serious. She'd be proud, Marcus said. Your grandfather, too. My grandfather had been a family physician in a small town for 40 years, never wealthy, always respected, died beloved by his community. My father had spent his entire adult life trying to distance himself from that legacy, building wealth and status instead, and somehow, I'd circled back to it. By noon, the official ceremony had ended, but community members lingered, touring the exam rooms, asking questions about services, scheduling appointments. The local news had conducted 3 interviews, and the live stream had reached over 2,000 views. My parents had finally left their car. I watched through the window as they approached the entrance, where security, a retired police officer named Dennis who'd volunteered to work our first week, stood checking names against the list. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see my father's posture shift from confident to aggressive. My mother's hand gestures becoming more animated. Dennis remained calm, pointing to his clipboard, shaking his head. Trevor appeared at my shoulder. This is simultaneously satisfying and uncomfortable to watch. Mostly satisfying, I admitted. My father pulled out his phone, held it up to Dennis as if showing proof of something. Dennis shrugged, unmoved. After several more minutes of increasingly agitated conversation, my parents retreated to their car again. My phone had 17 missed calls, 12 text messages, and 3 voicemails. I didn't check any of them. Dr. Rocha? Mrs. Patterson approached hesitantly. I just wanted to say thank you. My husband and we've been so worried about his diabetes care. The clinic we've been going to, they charge $200 just for the appointment, and that's before any actual treatment. That's exactly why we're here, Mrs. Patterson. Your first appointment is Monday at 9 a.m., correct? Yes, sir. And I already told everyone at church about you. I think you'll be getting a lot more patients from our congregation. After she left, Dr. Chen found me reviewing the medication inventory. Benjamin, I'm impressed with your pharmaceutical partnerships. Getting those discount agreements locked in before opening, that's smart planning. I spent 8 months negotiating them. Had to prove we'd actually serve the populations the programs are designed for. You've done your homework. She pulled out her tablet. I'd like to discuss a formal partnership between the clinic and my urgent care facilities. Referral relationships, shared electronic records, coordinated care for complex patients. Interested? Absolutely. We spent 30 minutes outlining possibilities. Her facilities served a different demographic, more suburban, better insured, but her overflow patients and after-hours cases often needed exactly what my clinic could provide. In exchange, I could refer patients needing specialized urgent care to facilities I trusted. By 3 p.m., the clinic had emptied except for Trevor packing up equipment and me sitting in my office, a small room with a desk, 2 chairs, and my medical degree hanging on the wall, the same degree my parents hadn't watched me receive. I'd framed it myself, bought the frame at Target for $15, and hung it slightly crooked because I couldn't find a level. It didn't matter. Every time I looked at it, I saw the same thing. Proof that I'd done this without them. My phone rang again. This time, Samantha. I almost declined, but curiosity won. What? Benjamin, this is cruel. Mom's devastated. I sent the invitation. You all declined. We didn't decline the opening ceremony. You declined when it was scheduled 3 months ago. I sent a save the date. I sent a formal invitation. I even called to confirm. Dad said, and I quote, "We'll see if we can make it." Silence on her end. You want to know what "we'll see" means in this family, Samantha? It means no. It means you're not a priority. It means if something more important comes up, and something always does, you won't show. That's not fair. You know what's not fair? Sitting at my medical school graduation, watching every other graduate celebrate with family while my seat remained empty, watching other residents get care packages and visits during their shifts while I worked 70-hour weeks alone, pitching my clinic idea to our parents and having Dad literally laugh in my face. He wasn't laughing at you. Yes, he was. He called community medicine charity work for people too idealistic to make real money. Mom said I was wasting my potential. You want to know who didn't laugh? Marcus Klein, Dr. Ferreira, the 300 community members who showed up to planning meetings because they needed this clinic to exist. I heard my mother's voice in the background, muffled. Mom wants to know if she can take you to lunch tomorrow, just the two of you, to talk. No, Benjamin. I have patient appointments Monday through Friday starting next week. I have administrative work all weekend. I have a dinner meeting tonight with investors. I don't have time for a conversation that should have happened years ago. She's trying now that there are cameras involved, now that the mayor mentioned me in her speech, now that the Seattle Times ran a feature. Where was this effort when I needed co-signers for student loans? When I was working night shifts during residency? When I was pitching investors and needed family support to seem credible? More muffled conversation in the background. They want to invest in the clinic, Samantha said finally. Dad's willing to match whatever your current investors contributed. And there it was. The real reason for the sudden interest. Tell Dad his money isn't needed or wanted. We're fully funded. Tell Mom I appreciate the lunch offer, but I'm not interested. And tell both of them that if they want to attend a future community event, they're welcome to check our public calendar like everyone else. You're being spiteful. I'm being consistent. Something I learned from watching them treat you versus me my entire life. I hung up before she could respond. Trevor emerged from the waiting room. Packed and ready. You good? Yeah. Thanks for everything today. Anytime. Literally, he hesitated. You know they're not going to let this go, right? Your parents. This is going to escalate. Let it. Because I'd spent 8 years preparing for exactly this moment. Every decision I'd made, the investors I'd chosen, the partnerships I'd built, the community relationships I'd fostered, had been calculated to create something my parents couldn't control, couldn't influence, couldn't take credit for. This clinic existed entirely outside their sphere of power, and that terrified them. The dinner at Daniel's Broiler was everything the clinic opening ceremony had been, but intimate. Our private room overlooked Elliott Bay, the Seattle skyline glittering across the water. Marcus had ordered wine, appetizers, and made it clear this was celebration, not just business. To Benjamin, he raised his glass, for having the courage to build something real. Dr. Chen and James Morrison echoed the toast, along with the 3 potential partners Marcus had invited: Dr. Patel, who ran a network of free clinics in Tacoma, Jennifer Hayes, a hospital administrator interested in replicating the model, and Robert Kim, whose nonprofit-funded healthcare initiatives across the Pacific Northwest. Your community engagement model is impressive, Dr. Patel said, reviewing the documentation I'd brought. 6 months of public meetings before opening. I needed to understand what the neighborhood actually needed, not what I assumed they needed. Turns out listening is revolutionary in healthcare. Everyone laughed, but it was true. The number of clinics that opened in underserved areas without actually asking residents what services they needed was staggering. I'd attended every community meeting, every neighborhood association gathering, every local event I could find. I'd surveyed 300 households, interviewed local social workers, talked to teachers and business owners. The result was a clinic designed around actual need. Extended evening hours because many patients worked multiple jobs. Spanish language services because 40% of the neighborhood was Latino. Mental health integration because trauma and poverty were inseparable from physical health. Sliding scale payments because income fluctuated and people needed care regardless. What's your sustainability model? Robert Kim asked. Because community medicine is noble, but it has to be financially viable long term. I pulled out my 5-year projections. We'll never be highly profitable, but we'll be sustainable. Blend of private insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, and grant funding. The key is volume and efficiency. We can see more patients at lower cost because we're not maintaining the overhead of traditional private practice. We spent 2 hours discussing expansion possibilities. Dr. E. Patel wanted to partner on behavioral health services. Jennifer Hayes saw potential for hospital discharge coordination that could reduce readmissions. Robert Kim talked about a grant program specifically designed for clinics like mine. By 9 p.m., I had 3 new partnerships in development and a potential grant application worth $175,000. Marcus walked me to my car. Your parents tried to corner me at my office today. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing for them. They demanded to know why I was supporting their son's defiance. I told them I was supporting their son's excellence, and there was a difference. What did they say? Your father threatened to pull his accounting firm's business from my company. Marcus smiled grimly. I told him to go ahead. His firm represents maybe 2% of my annual revenue. Your clinic represents the kind of medicine I wish I'd pursued. No contest. After he left, I sat in my car, looking at the Seattle skyline, processing everything. My phone had been mercifully quiet during dinner. I'd silenced it completely. But now notifications flooded in. 23 missed calls from my parents' numbers. 14 text messages from Samantha, ranging from pleading to angry. 6 voicemails I wouldn't listen to. And 1 email from my mother, subject line, "Please read." Against my better judgment, I opened it. Benjamin, I know you're angry. I know we've made mistakes. But this public humiliation is beneath you. Your father and I have always wanted the best for you, even if we didn't always show it the right way. We're proud of what you've accomplished, even if the clinic isn't the path we would have chosen. Please give us a chance to celebrate with you properly. We're family. That has to mean something. Love, Mom. I read it twice, feeling that familiar tightness in my chest. The same guilt manipulation pattern I'd experienced my entire life. We've made mistakes, but you're the one being unreasonable. We're proud, but not of what you've actually done. Family means accepting our terms. I deleted the email. Then I blocked both parents' email addresses, their phone numbers, and Samantha's number. I blocked them on all social media. I sent a brief message to extended family members explaining that I was establishing boundaries and wouldn't discuss my parents further. Finally, I drafted one last email to my parents, copying Samantha. Richard and Patricia, I've given this considerable thought. You did not attend my medical school graduation because Samantha's work presentation was more important. That was your choice, and I've accepted it. Today, I chose to prioritize people who've actually supported my career, not people who appeared when it became photo-worthy. That's my choice, and you need to accept it. I'm not interested in reconciliation, family dinners, or investments. The clinic exists independently of you, functions successfully without you, and will continue regardless of your involvement or approval. If you wish to utilize our medical services as patients, you're welcome to call and schedule appointments like anyone else. Our fees are based on a sliding scale according to income. I assume you'll be in our highest payment tier. Otherwise, I ask that you respect my boundaries and cease contact. Benjamin. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. 3 minutes later, my phone rang. Samantha calling from a number I hadn't blocked yet. I answered. What? You just destroyed them. Dad's furious. Mom's crying. How can you be this cold? Easy. I watched them be this cold to me for 28 years. I'm just applying the lesson they taught. They're your parents, biologically. But parents show up. Parents celebrate their kids' achievements. Parents invest in their kids' dreams even when they don't fully understand them. Marcus Klein has been more of a father to me in 2 years than Richard Rocha has been in my entire life. That's not true. He came to my residency completion ceremony. Did Dad? Silence. He introduced me to every investor for the clinic. Did Dad? More silence. He called me after every major milestone to congratulate me, ask how I was doing, offer advice. When did Dad last do that? Benjamin. Her voice cracked. They do love you. They just don't know how to show it. Then that's their problem to solve. Not mine. I hung up and blocked the new number. The drive home took 20 minutes. I lived in a studio apartment in Capitol Hill. Modest but comfortable, close enough to the clinic for a 15-minute commute. My medical school loans would take 15 years to pay off at my current salary. I owned a 7-year-old Honda. My furniture was mostly secondhand, and I'd never been happier. Because tomorrow morning I'd wake up and treat patients who needed me. I'd build relationships with a community that valued what I was doing. I'd continue developing a clinic model that might actually change healthcare accessibility in Seattle. My parents would wake up in their expensive house surrounded by expensive things, having learned an expensive lesson, that relationships require investment, and they'd invested in the wrong child. 6 months later, the clinic was thriving beyond projections. We'd seen 847 patients, partnered with 3 hospitals for coordinated care, and secured 2 major grants totaling $290 for expansion. The Seattle Times ran a follow-up feature, Community Care Wellness Center, a model for accessible medicine. The article detailed our outcomes: reduced emergency room visits among our patient population, improved chronic disease management, patient satisfaction scores above 90%. My parents were never mentioned, neither was their absence from my life. I'd heard through extended family that they'd attended Samantha's birthday party the previous month, posting dozens of photos on social media celebrating their amazing daughter. I'd seen the posts before blocking them. My mother's smile looked forced, my father's posture defensive. Marcus told me my father had lost 2 major clients who'd expressed discomfort with how he'd treated his son. Apparently, publicly dismissing your child's medical career didn't play well with the socially conscious Seattle business community. Dr. Ferreira invited me to speak at the University Medical School, addressing first-year students about community medicine. They need to see what success actually looks like, she explained. Not everyone should pursue private practice, but most students feel pressured toward high-income specialties. You're proof that purpose can matter more than profit. The speaking engagement was scheduled for the same day as Samantha's firm promotion party. I learned this when my mother sent one final email from a new address I hadn't blocked yet. Benjamin, Samantha's being made junior partner. There's a celebration at the Columbia Tower Club. As her brother, you should be there. As our son, we're asking you to come. Please, we can move past this. Mom. I didn't respond to the email. Instead, I spent that evening with 70 medical students, talking about patient-centered care, community health, and building careers aligned with values rather than status. 3 students approached me afterward, asking about residency opportunities focused on underserved populations. One specifically mentioned that she'd grown up poor, and my clinic model showed her that serving communities like hers was possible. Medicine saved my life, she said. I want to give that back, but everyone keeps telling me I should pursue dermatology or radiology for the income. Do what matters to you, I told her. The money will follow if you're competent and committed. But more importantly, you'll actually want to get up in the morning. Dr. Ferreira found me after the students left. Your parents called me last week. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. They wanted me to convince you to reconcile. I told them that I'd watched you build something extraordinary without their support, and perhaps they should reflect on why you'd managed just fine without them. How did they take that? About as well as you'd expect. Your mother cried. Your father got angry. I told them both that parenting doesn't end when kids become inconvenient, and hung up. The clinic continued growing. By the 1-year mark, we'd expanded to include dental services and a community pharmacy. Robert Kim's nonprofit funded a mobile health unit that could reach homebound patients. Dr. Chen's partnership meant our patients had seamless referrals to urgent care when needed. And through it all, my parents' absence remained conspicuous only to them. I'd built exactly what I'd set out to build, a practice independent of their approval, their money, their influence. They couldn't claim credit, couldn't leverage my success for their social benefit, couldn't control the narrative. The community knew who'd actually done the work. My investors knew who'd shown up during the difficult moments. My colleagues knew who'd earned their position through competence and commitment. Last month, I received a formal letter from my parents' attorney. They were updating their estate planning and wanted to include the clinic as a charitable beneficiary, ensuring the family legacy continues through Benjamin's important work. I sent the letter back with a brief note. The clinic accepts donations from individuals willing to complete our standard donor process, including background checks and alignment with our mission statement. If Richard and Patricia Rocha wish to donate, they can complete the application on our website like everyone else. No special consideration will be given based on biological relationship. I never heard back, because the truth is, they'd lost. Not in a dramatic explosion, not in a public confrontation, but in the quiet, permanent way that matters most. They'd gambled that I'd always come back, always seek their approval, always need their validation. They'd been wrong. The clinic's second location opened last month in South Seattle, serving another underserved neighborhood. Mayor Harrison attended the ceremony. So did Dr. Ferreira, Marcus Klein, Trevor, and 300 community members. My parents did not. And honestly, I didn't notice, Because I was too busy doing exactly what I'd always planned to do, practicing real medicine, serving real people, building real community health. They could keep their photo opportunities, their manufactured pride, their conditional support. I had something better, a career built on purpose, relationships built on respect, and success measured by impact rather than income. And unlike their approval, that actually mattered.